Hello. I'm hoping you're all tuning into this about right now. Um, I'm here in Sitka at a hotel. Anyway, it's telling me that it's building my audience here. So first of all, I'm gonna share just a couple of things. One, I wanted to say something about the item that I'm wearing around my neck. Um, this is an heirloom that started off as basically a piece of junk. It was made from a saw blade and some other things, and it was sold really cheap in Anchorage for like, I don't know, maybe $40 or something. But I've taken it and transformed it by giving it to jewelers and whatnot and having them work on it, and I've put over $500 into this thing and transformed it into something of beauty. It's an heirloom that I'm creating for my grandson to pass on to him. This has traveled with me to every speaking engagement I have given in all the schools all over Alaska. It's traveled with me on Indian reservations in the lower 48. I was wearing it when I spoke at Albuquerque, New Mexico, before representatives of all the First Nations people. Um, I've been real blessed to be able to do some really amazing things. One thing that I really want to share, and I run into a lot of people. I talk to a lot of people that have really been traumatized in life, and they're really hurting inside. And a lot of times people get the idea that, well, you haven't gone through as much as I have, so you can't really talk to me, or if that's not going to work for me because you didn't go through as much as I have. A lot of people don't know about the things that I've been through in my life because, for many years, I never even spoke about them. But I'm going to share some of those things so that people understand the principles that I want to share with you today and lay down that I'm talking about that will bring a transformation in your life. If you can see that it works for me in an extreme situation, then you'll understand that it can work for you. Um, I was born into an alcoholic family. From age 5 to 9 was a nightmare. Uh, Things got so bad that by the time I was 9 years old, I decided that I needed to leave home or I was going to die. My dad used to stick me between the wall and the refrigerator. He was a lightweight boxer, and he would punch me so hard and fast that my head would be bouncing off the wall. And, I could feel my head floating around in slow motion, and I got punch drunk. I couldn't even feel the punches anymore. And I got real hard as a really young child inside. I refused to cry, and I would go to school with a rage that no other kid could stand up to, and not even teachers. Nobody could hit me as hard as my dad, so nobody could back me down. And this is just how I'm starting life. Um, my oldest brother, he was sexually abusing the three youngest kids, and they were supposedly too young to remember or too young to tell. And we never did tell. But I was the oldest of the three, and I remembered. And what that did to me while I was being beat by my father, and sexually abused by my oldest brother, that it took away all self worth and all self esteem that I had. What little I had was taken from me. And, I felt like the most despicable, vile, dirty thing on the face of the earth. And I was screaming inside, but nobody could hear me, and I couldn't tell anybody. Well, my mom was getting beat by my father too, and so she took it out on us kids, and she would take the cord off an iron, and she'd chase us around and whip us with those, and That's like getting hit with a real whip. I mean, if it hits bare skin, it's going to split. And so because of all of these things happening in the house, and I just got to the point where I knew I had to leave home or I was going to die. When I was 9 years old, there was no glory hole in downtown Juneau, Alaska. You know, I look at a 9-year-old today and I see a 9-year-old and I think there's no way you can go down there and survive. But I did it for 2 years, and I did it by going downtown, and I looked in all the apartment buildings during the daytime, and I would find their furnace rooms, so I knew where they were at. I would figure out what time they locked the outside door. I would sneak in before they locked the outside door, and I would go hide behind the furnace, and I would sit there really quiet and wait for the whole building to just go real quiet. And once I knew it went quiet, that I could go to sleep now. It was okay, and it was like the furnace was my blanket, and my coat was my pillow. And I used to lay there as a 9-year-old child thinking there's something desperately wrong with the world. There's something horribly wrong here. And the only thing I could tell myself was that it's me. There's something wrong with me. I am broken. I am bad. I deserve everything that I'm getting here. And so I had that complex. If I did go to school, I certainly didn't let anybody know that I was sleeping in basements behind furnaces, and stealing my food out of grocery stores and whatnot. I mean, somehow I was able to keep that hidden, and so at 6 o'clock in the morning, I could hear the building start to wake up, and I would wake up and I would get out of there before anybody saw me, because I knew if somebody saw me, then I wouldn't be able to go back there that night. And so I would wait for the grocery store to open. Once it did, I'd go inside and I would eat as much food as I could eat in there. I would shoplift as much as I could, and I would go hide out during school, because I was smart enough to know that if they caught me during school hours, that everything would be exposed. And for 2 years, I did this day in and day out. At nighttime, I would find ways into buildings. I never broke into anything. I didn't go like break a window and go in, and take what I needed. I would crawl on the roofs or underneath the buildings, and I would find ways into any building I wanted to in downtown Juneau, and I would get clothes. I would get what I needed to survive, and all of this just really took a toll on who I was and my personality, because I was a thief. I had to be a thief to survive, and it just, after 2 years, they caught me. I became a ward of the state. They put me in a real jail where the city and borough has their meetings now. It used to be the women's division with, steel bars and stuff, and they put me in there for 6 months trying to figure out what they were going to do with me. And while I was in that jail, the sexual abuse and the physical abuse was pretty much worse than it was at home. And I got to the point where I asked them to lock me behind in one of those little tiny cells, to lock me in there by myself. And I would go hide in the corner and put a mattress up in front of me, to shield myself from the spit and the urine, and the things that were thrown at me, and the abuse, and I spent the last 2 months of my time in that jail in that tiny, tiny little cell that was just enough for a bed and a toilet. I mean, so already I have so much rage burning in my life. I have no self-worth, no self-esteem. I have a torrent of pain that there's no outlet for, and as a teenager, they put me in group homes. I fought my way out of every group home. I exhausted everything that they had for me, and I ended up finishing high school living at Lemon Creek Correctional Center in the women's division. They'd let me out every day to go to school, and then I'd have to go back to jail after school, and so I tried to keep that a secret that I was in jail while going to school, and it just my whole life, things, it just seems like there was tragedy, and part of the problem is that I built a wall to protect myself to shield myself from the pain that I was going through in life, and I became kind of like the clown, I always had a smile on my face. I always joked about things, I just convinced people that nothing was going on while I was dying inside, and while I was in school, middle school, I was trying to commit suicide. I mean, I had multiple attempts and I failed at them, and that just added to everything. You can't even do that right. You can't even take your own life right, and I was always just, I was my worst enemy in a sense, because I was brutal to myself. When I became an adult, I was sleeping in the same abandoned cars. I was sleeping in the same basements that I was sleeping in as a child. Not much had changed. And I was so alone in the world. Everybody was better than me. I was the lowest of the low. I was least in my father's house. And I had only one dream. And this one dream was find a soulmate, settle down, have a home where love lives and comfort is. The only home that I would ever know in my life. And that's all I wanted out of life. I didn't want anything more. And I couldn't even do that right because I didn't have an identity. I got into a crowd and I became whatever the crowd was. And when I was alone, I didn't have a clue who I was. I only knew, that there was pain and there was darkness and there was depression and there was post-traumatic stress and there was everything in my life was just ripping me apart on the inside, and I remember once being downtown really high and I saw my mom. That's when she used to drink, and she was heading to a bar, and I walked up to her just blown out of my mind. I said, Mom, is it always going to be like this? I didn't live with them. I never made it back home, but they were like strange, familiar strangers to me. When I became an adult, I was so severely depressed that my weight dropped down to 109 pounds. They were going to put me in a hospital. They said, we don't think that you're consciously trying to commit suicide, but we think subconsciously you're starving yourself to death. I went into treatment to get away from alcohol and drugs because I understood, on top of all the pain and stuff that was going on in my life, that alcohol and drugs was making it totally out of control. And I knew that, I had to get away from that. So I decided that was the first thing that I had to do. And, I went to a treatment center in Anchorage, the Cliff Rose Center, and I was never court ordered. I always volunteered. I went in there. I did those steps. I did everything that they were asking me to do. I didn't fight with anybody. I didn't cause any problems. I didn't break any rules. I was the perfect person there in this treatment center. And I was told by the counselor that I had to leave. Somebody has said that they can't hear me. If anybody else can't hear me, maybe you might say something, but it might be a glitch that Stephanie's experiencing. And you could just put a note on here, I'll see it. But anyway, she told me that I had to leave the treatment center, and I couldn't for the life of me understand why. And she said, Michael, you have so many issues that are beyond our scope that we don't feel that we can help you, and we feel that you are too emotionally unstable for treatment. And so I left. I think within a couple weeks after that, I went into a coma-like sleep. I got off work. I wasn't using drugs or alcohol. I was going to go to a dance that night, the AA dance. I laid down to take a nap. I woke up 2 weeks later. I was 20 pounds lighter, anorexic, suffering from malnutrition and dehydration. And I only woke up twice during that 2-week period, long enough to drink a glass of Kool-Aid. That's the only thing that saved my life. So during my journey, looking for a way out of all of this. Um, I was under psychiatric care for 20 years. During that 20 years, all of the counselors that I had, I would pour out my heart and soul, and I would tell them about all the things that had crushed me and hurt me in my life, and how angry I was, and the rage that was burning there. And all they would do at the end of listening to me was look at me and say, well, what do you think you should do about that? And inside I could hear myself screaming, what do you mean? What should I do about this? You're the one that has the master's degree in psychology. You're the one who's supposed to have the answers. You're supposed to tell me how to get out of this. 20 years, and I never got relief from them. When I got involved in like AA and NA and different places, churches, I ran into unique people here and there, and they began to give me some real wisdom. They began to give me things that sounded so simple, and I felt like I even tried them before, but I would soon discover that I had done it wrong the whole time. The first person walked up and they said something like, I perceive you don't have the ability to forgive. And they said, if you can't do it, you need to pray and ask God for that ability. And they said, you need to forgive with your heart, not your mind. Because that's where we live, from our hearts. And if I forgive you with my mind, I could change my mind later today or tomorrow. But if I forgive you with my heart, that's binding and lasting. And so I didn't have that ability. I wanted to go down to Seattle because the brother that abused me, he went to Seattle. He met a beautiful woman, got married, had beautiful children. He created his own business. He had a nice big house, multiple cars. He had everything that I wanted. And I was sleeping in abandoned cars watching this. And I was thinking in my mind, what gives you the right to introduce me to hell and walk off and live in your heaven? And so I was thinking in my mind, I'm going to take a gun down there and I'm going to walk in his house and I'm going to tell his wife and kids to get out. I was so sick inside. And I began to pray and ask God for that ability to forgive the way this person was talking to me about, from my heart. And I don't know how long it took. I know that I didn't give that up. I hung on to that like a drowned man will hang on to a piece of driftwood with everything that I had. And I desired it. And it came. One day I just realized, that I had forgiven everybody. Something had changed. And it was so miraculous in the sense that I was standing there, and the last person that I could ever forgive, the hardest person to forgive, was me. I knew about all of the horrible things that I had ever done to people in my life, innocent people, and I couldn't chase them all down and say, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I was crazy. I couldn't make amends for all of that, and so I didn't deserve forgiveness. But when I was able to forgive everybody, even the worst of the worst, even my brother, I finally had the right to forgive myself. And I can't tell you how that really began to change things. I know what a child feels like when they're sitting in the darkest place of their life where there is no light and there is no hope and they cannot see a way out of that darkness, and the only thing that they can think about is suicide. I know exactly what that feels like. But today I know the way out, and I can go there and say, you know what? I know exactly where you are at. I know exactly how you feel, and I know the way out. Take my hand. Let's go. I will show you. And so after that forgiveness came, it was like I was able to forgive myself for the first time in my life. I'm able to have a relationship with me. I get to know who I am now. I get to find my identity at last. I get to change in ways that will allow me to tolerate and even love myself at some point. And what a remarkable journey it began. You know, Forgiveness is a life-changing force if it's used right. It's nothing if you toy with it in your mind and throw it around like a ping pong ball. But it transformed my life. And so, you know, I came to a point where I had one sole physical and legal custody of my daughter. And my daughter gave me things that nobody else could ever give me. She taught me things that nobody else could ever teach me. Without my daughter, I would still be that street person. And I would be so broken and alone and worthless. But it was my daughter that taught me what selfless love was. She taught me what integrity was. She taught me what honor was. She taught me what devotion was. She gave me a purpose in life and a direction. And I'm so grateful that I had that opportunity, because it led me out of a horrible place. It began to equip me for what was going to come further down the road. And when I won sole and physical legal custody of my daughter, I had this girlfriend, and she told me, she said, you know what? You pay way too much attention to your daughter. She said, unless you pay less attention to her, she said, I'm leaving. Now, I can't tell you real adequately how desperately I needed her in my life. I mean, there was a powerful hunger and need in my life for her to be there. But I had made an oath to my daughter as an infant that I would stand by her and I would protect her, and I would give my life to protect her from all of the horrors that I had ever had to walk through in my life. And so as much as it hurt me, I told her bye. Soon afterwards, I had a second girlfriend, and she told me the same thing. So it's becoming obvious to me there's a problem here. And so I have to make a decision, and I decided, well, I'm not going to have any relationships till I am done raising my daughter. I am going to keep my word. I'm going to keep my promise. I'm going to keep my pledge that I've given unto her. After all, she's given me everything. And I kept that promise, that pledge. For 15 years, I stayed single and I raised my daughter. I didn't do everything right. She even tells me that. Dad, you didn't do everything right. And, how could I? I had no training. I mean, I did the best of what I could. But my daughter has so many beautiful and wonderful qualities about her, that I know I did a lot right, too. So I'm pretty happy about that. So at the end of the 15 years, she has her fiance, who's now her husband. She has her children, which are my beautiful grandchildren. And it's like I kept my promise. I completed my task. I finished the mission. It's my turn. I got to go out there. I got to find that soulmate. I got to find that home where love lives and comfort is, and at least enjoy the end of my life and that comfort that I have never known. And then they tell me that, you have end-stage COPD and you're going to be lucky if you live 5 years. And it's like, that was really hard. I was involved with this girl, and the way I felt about it was that she is my last hope. She's my last chance to ever have this dream that I've held on to all of my life. If this doesn't work, it's finished, it's done, it's over with. I don't have the right to start anything else. And We were like, I don't know, 15, 20 days away from getting married. And she sends me a text from Anchorage. She's up there with her brother as a medical escort. And the text says, "You need to toughen up. I just remarried my ex-husband." And my heart broke. I mean, I was in a church when my heart broke, of all places. And when it happened, I didn't even realize that I was in the church anymore. I just knew that my heart just literally broke within me. And I staggered up to the front of that church and fell on my face, and I started screaming out loud, "No, no, don't do this. Don't let this happen. Please, please." And I was begging with all of my every bit of my being, "Don't let this happen to me." But it was too late. And I remember after just begging and crying like that for a while, it's like every woman in that church was crying. I wasn't aware of it because I wasn't even aware I was there, but they couldn't handle hearing what was happening there. And I stood up, and I'm still not aware that I'm in a church, and I'm talking to, the Great Spirit or God or my higher power, whoever you want to call him. And I'm talking to him because 3 times I have literally walked away from him because I've lost an engagement like this. And I would get really angry inside and say, "What? You can't even give me this? Why am I even walking with you?" And I would just storm away. And this time I remember standing there with my heart totally broken within me. And I said, "I don't understand. I do not know what's happening here." I said, "But I do know one thing. I'm not walking away from you this time." Things began to change a little bit. And it was soon after I said that I was selected to go to New York City and make a national TV commercial with Center for Disease Control. And it would open up the door for me to travel all over the place and, begin to really reach out and help other people. And so, just prior to that happening, I left something out. Just prior to that happening, when the doctors told me that you only got 5 years left to live if you're lucky, and that was another breaking point in my life where I just stood before him, and I remember it was almost like I could hear him speaking to me, and he was asking me one question, and the one question was, "If you could ask of me any one thing, what would it be?" And it was like all of my life I just wanted a soulmate. I just wanted that home. I mean, why didn't I just jump right there and say, "Just give me a wife. Let me have that home"? I mean, that's what I wanted most in life, it seemed. But that isn't what happened. It was almost like my spirit leaped forward, and immediately the words fell out of my mouth before I even had time to even think. But my heart has always followed it and known that it was meant to be that way. I said, "Just draw close to me so I can feel your presence and use me like Samson standing between the 2 pillars." Because I know it's over in that sense. I didn't realize till later the depth of that request. Because when I read in the Bible, it says, "In God's presence, there is no need." That's where I live today, pretty much. I don't want to be rich. I don't even care if I'm famous. People tell me all the time, "You're famous." I say, "No, I'm not famous. Jesus is famous. Everybody knows who he is. I'm just well known." You know, um, I don't care about the things of this world anymore. And it's kind of ironic because when I fought for my life in the emergency room for 4 hours trying to breathe, all I could take was tiny little gulps of air. And every little gulp that I so desperately fought for, that I had sweat beading down my face, I felt that was my last breath, that I was going to suffocate to death. And I don't think there's anything more terrifying than suffocation. They say burning to death is, but I don't know. You know, those are two extreme things. You know, and at the end of that 4 hours, when I finally did get to breathe, you know, all I could think was, no human being should ever have to experience this. This is beyond terror. No one should ever have to know what this feels like. And I became committed at that point that I wanted to do whatever I could to ensure as many people as possible would get to escape this experience. So it brought me to a point where I decided it's too late for me, but it's not too late for you. And that would open another miraculous chapter in my life of transformation. You know, I said, you know, by forgiving everybody with my heart, you know, it kind of like took away all the power away from all the horrible, traumatic things that happened in my life. You know, now my life was just this big garbage pile, but it didn't have all this bitterness, this anger, this hate, this rage, this depression, this post-traumatic stress disorder, these thoughts of suicide, and all these things connected to it, driving me crazy. It now was just a big pile of garbage and pain, and it's like, now I could manage and go through that pain, you know, and pain is inevitable. You know, I had already learned how to forgive everybody, you know, with the help of my higher power, God, or whomever you want to call him. But, you know, and the one thing that was really made clear to me also was that somebody said, you need to learn the secret of mind over matter. If you don't mind, it don't matter. And what they were really getting across to me, I thought it was funny. I laughed at it first, but I realized there was something to what they were saying. And what they were telling me was that now that I had forgiven everybody and let go of all of this, and I was able to take that huge garbage pile of my life, you know, because the pain and the bitterness and the rage and the depression and the post-traumatic stress disorder and all the thoughts of suicide were no longer connected to it and driving it. I was able to walk through that pain like I was supposed to walk through it and allow it to process me, because if you process pain wrong, it's going to become bitterness, anger, rage, depression, suicide. You know, it'll cause mental health problems, all kinds of things. But if you process pain right, it becomes empathy, compassion, love, understanding, wisdom, long suffering, patience, kindness. You know, it creates character in us that nothing else can create. You know, and so pain is a good thing, you know, and most people, like I said earlier, will do one of two things. They'll run from it or they'll try to medicate it. And if you run from it, you don't grow. And if you medicate it, you become sicker, you know. And so, you know, I'm fortunate that I was able to walk through that. So now that I've been able to do that, you know, that huge garbage pile of my life is no longer a garbage pile. It's gems, it's gold, it's silver. You know, it's the stuff that I use to reach out there and help other people who are dying inside, who are trying to find a way out. You know, and in my Bible it says, whatever comfort you have been comforted with, that shall you also be able to comfort others also. And so it's like, I used to really get really upset with God and say, you know, how come? How come I had to go through such a horrible life? How come I never got anything that I wanted? How come even after, you know, giving up 15 years of my life to raise my daughter, that I'm even being denied, you know, this soulmate? Everybody else gets to have a soulmate, you know. That's kind of the way I looked at it. It seems like everybody has a wife or a girlfriend or something, you know. And so I get really bitter over that, you know. But now I understand that because I have suffered almost everything there is imaginable and received comfort for that, that I am equipped to go out there in a dying world and start reaching out to people and offering comfort and showing them the way. And so this instant forgiveness, that's what keeps me free today. If you do something to me, you hurt me, you do something that I don't like, you make me angry, I'm not going to try to figure out how I could get even with you. And I'm not even going to try to figure out how I could get one up on you because I was real good at that. I'm going to try to figure out how I can forgive you as quickly as possible because I don't want to be a garbage collector any longer. I don't want to walk through life anymore picking up resentments and hate and anger and all these other things. And so that became the thing that keeps me clean now from getting repolluted. So then, when I'm being told that I only got 5 years and I realize, well, it's too late for me, but it's not too late for you, then this is the first time that I've been able to actually set myself aside to die to self. And the greatest freedom I have ever discovered in this life is being free from myself. When I used to walk around and I used to get so angry and everybody ticked me off, it's because I was wearing self on the outside, with all those buttons out there and people were pushing them and boy, they were just driving me nuts. But because I don't have self anymore, I've set self aside, I've died to self and decided, you know what? It's not about me anymore, it's about you. And it's about what I can give to you. And if I can give you this that I have found to be so valuable, this is a true treasure in life. The treasures aren't the things that you find in your bank account. They're not the things you see sitting around in your house. They're not the things you have in your yard. They're the things that you hold within your heart that make your life so valuable to other people. It's the love, the joy. There's even a commandment in there that said, let not every man think upon his own, but think of that of every other. That's the way the native people used to live before everything changed. It wasn't just the mom's dad and dad's job to raise a child. It was a whole village's job to raise a child. Everybody was giving. Everybody was considering that of every other. And because they were doing that, the village was taken care of well. And they were taken care of well because other people had their back, were taking care of them. And they were a very strong, knit family. That's been lost. And so when I found that I decided to lay my life down, quit thinking about what I could get out of life in the little bit of time that I got left, because it's all about me, by God. I didn't get anything, so I deserve everything type of attitude, and just let that die and decide that I want to go out there and I want to empower people. I want them to grab a hold of these miraculous tools that I have in my life so that they can be free and they can in turn do that for others, because I'm not going to be around forever. And I know there are other people out there doing it, but still, this is a growing thing. If I pass it on to 10 of you and you each pass it on to 10 others, it won't take long before we pay it forward and we change the world. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. And so this is the other miraculous thing that began to happen when I began to walk in this principle. I would go into places like the psychiatric ward at Bartlett Memorial Hospital, and I had a guy run up to me, and he had devils tattooed up both arms with big burning flames, and he had wild piercings, and he was powerful, strong looking, and he had this rage and intensity in his face that was scary. Literally. The guy dwarfed me, and he ran right up to me, and he said, everybody in my life has let me down. Everybody stabbed me in the back. All of this is happening, that's happening. He just laid out this whole history of horrible things that had gone down in his life and why he was so messed up and so angry, and it was him against the world, and here he was locked up in insane asylum, basically, and then after about 15 minutes, he looked at me and he said, "But I don't suppose you would know anything about that." And I said, "I don't know. I left home when I was 9 years old. I spent 28 years on the streets, feeling like I was the most despicable thing that ever was." And I told him that God or the Great Spirit, whoever you want to call him, because everybody seems to want to call him something different, he just broke into my life. And he began to lay down these principles of forgiveness. And he began to transform my life. And he began to show me that that huge garbage pile in my life wasn't a garbage pile. When it was processed properly, it became something very valuable and very precious. And I told that man standing there in the psychiatric ward that day, I said, that garbage pile in your life, you can transform this with his help. If you let his light shine within you and transform that pile of garbage, that you can walk free, and you can turn around to all the others that are in this place you're at, that are stuck there, who have no idea the way out, that you can shine your light in their darkness, and you can reach out and lead them out of this place. And that man stood there in front of me with tears just pouring down from his eyes. Because probably for the first time somebody was telling him, you have the seeds of greatness in you. You can do amazing things. I wasn't standing there in judgment saying, you know what, you're a jerk. You're out there hurting people. You're doing all this crazy stuff. What's the matter with you? And shame him into becoming the right person. I addressed the problem. The problem was what was within. I started all of this traveling around doing anti-tobacco, and this even pertains to that, because most people smoke because of the pain and the trauma that's locked in their life, and they can't get free because they want to get free, and they even quit for a while, but they come back because the pain always drives them back. And if you address the pain, the trauma, the depression, the post-traumatic stress disorder that exists within them, then they're probably not going to come back to tobacco once they get free. I mean, a lot of my friends, they look at me and they say, you know what? I'm so sorry that you're dying. And I can feel their pity and I can feel their sadness. And I look at them and I say, you know what? I'm so sorry you're not living. Because I am living today. I am walking on clouds. I am leaping over mountains. Because I get a chance to stand in somebody's life, somebody I don't even know, but I know their pain. And I know the intensity that they're locked in. And I know their helplessness. And when I'm able to just step into their life and shed a little bit of light and point them in the right direction and give them the tools to get there, then I see an intense joy spring up in their life. And I see the excitement knowing that something has changed. And I get to feel every bit of their joy, and I get to feel my joy on top of that. So I get the double blessing of joy. So I've been doing this for 3 years now, and I've been walking around full of so much joy that people are looking at me and they're saying, you look really good. You look really healthy. I mean, you're getting well, aren't you? You're better, right? And I tell them, no. Physically, I am worse off than I've ever been. It's getting really bad. They're saying you need to be on lung transplants now. And that's what I desired the whole time. It was like I couldn't get on this lung transplant list soon enough. I mean, I've been dreaming about it and pushing them. Come on, don't make me get so weak I won't even be able to do this. And now they're finally saying your health is degraded to the point where we can now put you on that list. And I had to look at it and think, if I do this, That's going to take away all my strength. I may not survive it. Even if I do survive it, they're going to knock down my immune system. I can't go in public anymore in big crowds. I mean, it's telling me that my journey, walking through all these schools, speaking to all these young kids, handing them these tools that could transform their lives, would be over. Now, if I was to survive these lung transplants, it would only give me 3 to 5 years. They're not like other organs. You don't get, like a liver, you get a new liver, you can maybe live 20, 30, 40 more years. And same with other organs, but not with lungs. You're lucky if you live 3 to 5. So is that extra 3 to 5 years worth more than what is being offered to thousands and thousands of kids across the state? Every time I hear of a young child committing suicide, my heart breaks within me. Because I know if I was only there, if I could only have spoken to them, if I could only have shared this miracle of transformation with them. Because most people don't understand forgiveness. You tell them you need to forgive everybody, and they say, no way, I'm not forgiving this person over there. They don't deserve forgiveness. I'll carry that to my grave, and they will. Forgiveness is not for them, it's only for you. My forgiveness does not excuse your actions. It only keeps your actions from destroying my heart. Forgiveness is such a miraculous and powerful tool. It's a life-changing force if it's used properly. If you throw it around like a ping pong ball with your mind, no, okay, yeah, I'll forgive you, whatever. It's worthless. It's just a time stopper for a little bit. But being in service to other people, there's something about that. There's something about that that's so powerful, so changing, so refreshing. It's amazing. When I discovered that, I kept thinking, why didn't I figure this out when I was younger? Things could have been a whole lot different. I didn't need to walk through all of this. But I have this desperation in my soul now that I want to walk through all the villages, especially starting with Hooper Bay, where 3 children committed suicide back to back. I don't want to talk to just the children. I want to talk to the entire village. I want to talk to mom, to dad, to grandpa, to grandma, to aunts and uncles, and the children together. Let us reason together to get them to all turn towards each other and say, you know what? I am so sorry. You must forgive me. We can pick this up and we can change this together. The problem is that I speak in a lot of schools and the children get it. But they go home and the parents don't have it. And they go home into that same darkness, into that same pain, into the drugs and the alcohol. And these parents who are thinking that, they just want to bury their pain or hide from it, or, that maybe their children are in the way of them living the life that they want to live. I don't know. It's different for each one. But in any case, these children who get a glimpse of this light that shines in the darkness, that the darkness cannot overcome, they go back to that situation. And who knows how long they can walk in there. But if I'm able to speak to the whole village, everybody, and we all get a look at this together, then I think there's a chance that these villages could begin to return to the way it was. And they could become an example to those of us that live in the bigger cities. Because we all look out into those villages and we know what's going on out there. We know about the suicides. We know about the heavy drug addiction and all the craziness that goes on out there. But we see a transformation in these villages and they become models, shining lights to us. A lot of people in the cities are going to think, what the heck happened? What is this? But it's got to come through us, other people that care enough to lay their own life aside. You know, I could never see that before when they'd say you got to die to yourself, you know, and I used to think, think about everybody else's and not me. That didn't make sense, because I was in survival mode. I was the survivor from the life that I had before, and I had to beg, borrow, and steal everything that I had, and it didn't make sense to me to give anything away because I needed that, and once I got kind of forced into that situation and I discovered the blessing that it brought me, it just blew me away. I told you I left home when I was a young child, brutalized, no self-worth, no self-esteem. But because I've been forced into this, now I'm not going to tell you that I was just a smart guy that just got it before everybody else and just jumped out there and did it and you should too. No, I was forced into it. They told me you got 5 years left to live, and I had to do soul searching inside of myself and said, okay, that's all I got. What am I going to do with this? It's got to mean something. And it really drew me to take a hard look at myself. And so I was forced into this. But I'm glad that I was. And I'm glad that I was able to stick with it long enough to begin to put something together that I could actually give to other people. And say, hey, try this way. So I hope in whatever little time I got left that I get accomplished more in this little time that I have in the whole 3 years before me. And that's a pretty big wish for me, because I've spoken to an untold number of many of people, and I've seen so many people blessed and helped. And I've had so many people come back and say, you know what, because of you, things are different for me now. So when it's my time to walk in the woods, I get to say I ran my race. I finished my course. I did what was set before me to do. I'm not going to lay there with regrets over the things that I didn't do or should have done. And I'm so glad that I know that life isn't about me, it's about you. Anyway, I'm going to end this. I'm probably going to plan some other ones, shorter blocks of time, so I don't run into this thing where I lose the connection in a half hour. But I might start looking at part 1, part 2, part 3 type stuff. But I hope, to inspire people to really look at this and maybe decide for themselves, you know what, I want to do that, and that's how you do it. Because if I can inspire many of you to go down this path at this degree, I mean, we're going to shake the foundations of this state anyway and really begin something. It has so much potential. There's nothing stronger than the power of love. It is the greatest language on the face of the earth. And it holds healing within it. I want to thank you guys all for giving me a little bit of your time and bearing with me through this. And, I'm excited every day about doing this. I mean, I carry my soapbox everywhere because this is real life. This is meaningful. And this is precious beyond belief. And don't ever feel sorry for me, because I have found the greatest treasures of all, and they're inside of my heart. I have love that flows like a river through me, and joy. And I have this peace that surpasses all understanding. I know suffocation's coming. I know the end's coming, but I don't care. I'm not scared of it, and I'm not angry. I'm only blessed that I get to live today. And I get to show others the way before it's time to leave. Thank you all for being here. Copies of this, I guess, will be on my Facebook. I'll delete the little blips that are there that were me trying to come back on. But they'll be there. You can share them with other people. And if you missed most of this, I mean, you could pick it up and go back there and listen to them. But I hope we can be brothers and sisters in arms. Thank you for being here, and I got to get some sleep before my appointments at Mount Edgecombe Hospital tomorrow, and I'm really honored to